Prince Harry has lost his legal bid to pay for police protection when he's in the UK. This is after the Home Office argued that wealthy people should not be able to buy services from the police. Still with me in the studio is security expert Will Geddes. Very glad to have you here, Will, obviously. Now, you spend a great deal of time working for high net worth individuals, big corporations, even sometimes for countries. What do you make of Prince Harry having thought that what he would do was simply pay police officers to guard him? Did you think that was a naive aim and request in the first place?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily naive. I can understand why he's done it and why he would feel that he would be entitled to it to a certain extent, even though, to be honest, he's kind of been dropped from his HRH duties and he is not a participating royal as such.
No.
But he's grown up since he was a small dot with security around him. And the security that he's grown up with has always been royalty protection officers. Now, I would say this, Vanessa, but we're probably the best in the world in terms of close protection and executive protection, and royalty protection are especially well recognised for their privacy. And we know that privacy is a big subject for obviously both Harry and Meghan.
Yes. So when he's been told, no, you absolutely may not pay police officers from this country to come and guard you, because of what that would mean would be that the police force was kind of trained up, paid for by all of us, and then the rich could just swoop in and just handpick or cherry pick the officers they fancied to come and work for them in a private capacity. Even if Harry pays for it himself, he's not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
What does that then leave him as options? What can he do? What will he do for security?
Well, there's a lot of things we can do, he can do. He can have a model of security. I mean, there are rumours that he may have a former royalty protection officer actually in amongst his security detail, but whether they're responsible or the personal protection officer for him himself, I don't know. But he can replicate it within the private sector. I have a lot of former royalty protection officers who work for me, and also others from all sorts of backgrounds, special forces, elite forces and the like. So the thing is that his security can be as well maintained by a private capability, but inevitably it's going to cost him a considerable sight more. And the problem, as you rightly say, is if he was given that opportunity to use royalty protection, then that sets an incredibly dangerous precedent for anybody else in the future who may say, well, I have the resources to pay for it, I'd like it also.
Yes. And one of the things that people have said about Prince Harry and Meghan, and they've said it a lot and they've said it vociferously, is why don't they pay for their own security? They're worth millions and millions of pounds. If you factor in the Netflix money, if you factor in the money for Spare, if you factor in the money that Harry was left by his mother, Princess Diana, and by the Queen Mother, actually, and, a whole slew of dosh, which makes most people think, you're worried about security. We understand why. Pay for it. But when you say it's very, very expensive, what sorts of sums? I know you can't give me the exact chapter and verse, but a vague idea of what it might cost per year, for example.
Well, I was doing my sums on this a little bit earlier, Vanessa, and I mean, he would have a team between 7 and 8 personal protection officers. There will be drivers, there will be vehicles, there's the fuel, there's the travel, and then potentially what we call an RST, a residential security team, which we do know he has. It's certainly in Montecito. They've had a couple of intruders quite recently.
Does that mean they live on the premises, they sleep there?
Exactly, and that team would be comprising of probably 2 or 3 individuals. Then you times that by 3 in terms of rotations. You're probably coming at the end of the year around about the £3 million mark.
Are you? And that's for 24-hour protection on that
Correct.
scale.
And for him travelling around the world.
And it looks to me as if what you are about to say is he would need to spend that amount. He couldn't scale it down, pare it back. That would be dangerous, would it?
No, I think if he wanted to replicate what he would have as a royal, that would be what the cost would be, plus everything else on top of it. I mean, and that's only to start with. If in the private sector, it really depends on his agenda and Meghan's agenda and schedule and whether they're travelling around to very major events. I know there are some very leading celebrity sports people, for example, who will get their host to pay for their security. So there are ways to defer that cost. He could pay considerably less than $3 million a year, but again, it is about how much liberty, how much freedom he necessarily or she wants to be able to move around the place.
So on a typical day in Montecito, the sort of day that we saw in the documentary, where they're going with Archie to the chicken house and they're going with Lilibet to put her in a high chair and give her a bun or whatever it is. What kind of security do they need when they're not really going anywhere or doing anything much?
Well, even with that, you're going to have probably, if they're together as a family, you're probably going to have about 3 personal protection officers, plus driver, plus possibly a chase vehicle as well.
Right.
You're going to have the residential security team. So you're probably going to have 5 to 6 people on just purely on that one day. And that's speculation on a very low level, basic level for them in Montecito. I do have some friends who live in Montecito, and they did tell me that when they have seen them moving around, again, it's been reasonably obvious that they've got security. And this draws back to the royalty protection and probably why Harry once said, the guys within royalty protection are incredibly discreet. They blend into the background, they become the ultimate grey men. Whereas in the United States, and this is no disrespect to my American cousins,
yes,
but they are slightly more overt than perhaps their British counterparts.
And I do remember once, I sound as if I mingle with royalty at all times. I definitely don't, but that's why I remember this. I was once invited to the polo, and Prince Harry was there. And I remember somebody saying to me, and you see that guy over there and that guy over there at that table, far away, not far away, but a few, a few tables away in a corner. Those are his security. And you see that man that just seems to be leaning on a pillar just over there, looks like he's just, having a chat. That's security. You see that fellow over there? And that's what you mean, isn't it? It's all very subtle.
Absolutely. And I mean, and if you're delivering it professionally, then it should be very, very grey. It should be very sort of blending into the background. I remember as one of my principals once said to me, Vanessa, they said, I want you close enough to be able to react, but not so close I need to introduce you.
So that was my next question. Do the Sussexes ever get to spend any time alone in a room on their own without security standing in one corner and the next corner? Are they always outside the door, or how does it? What happens at night when they want to go to sleep and other things people might do at night that come naturally? How near or how far is security at all times?
That can be done in a very effective way. I mean, in a home you can have panic buttons, and that can allow the security team to obviously spread out a little bit. There are very many principals who don't want their security living in the house, so they may be in a lodge nearby. And I believe that they do have a lodge at their home in Montecito. So that could be the control room for the security team. As long as you've got good physical security, CCTV cameras, intrusion detection, and alarms, then you've got sufficient to potentially mobilise the team to intercept the problem before it becomes a problem or even gets to the house. So they can retain a good degree of privacy in their own home. The challenge is when they're moving about, that they have to get used to having it about them. But Harry's grown up with it, so it's not going to be a great sort of ordeal for him.
Are you ever surprised by people of great public profile, A-listers, major politicians, heads of state, or anybody of that ilk, who just don't have security at all? Do you ever hear that story?
Oh, yeah, I see it as well.
I've
seen quite a few. Quite often, these are very mega-star celebrities as well. I remember bumping into Paul McCartney once in Mayfair, and he had no security around him. And obviously, with my professional, I'm beady, looking for any security that might be very discreet. Keanu Reeves is very well known for travelling around Manhattan on his own, travelling on the public transportation system.
And what do you think of that?
I think it's very good. I think that, it's funny, there are quite a few, there's a quite well-known celebrity, I won't mention his name, who I had a chat with the other day, and he tended to have this habit of putting on his baseball cap and his sunglasses. And I said, that actually probably draws more attention than if you just had a hood up.
Yeah.
So, sometimes they can overplay and try to hide.
If somebody very prominent, like Paul McCartney, known all over the world, one of the most famous men on the planet, feels that he doesn't need security, he can just wander about. I live quite near where he lives, and I've seen him loads and loads of times. He goes to the gym, he goes to the supermarket. He really does. He just leads a normal life. He's very wealthy and very famous, but he does all his own stuff. You can see him doing it. Do you think that means that people don't need as much security as they think they do? Or do you think it just means he's very lucky? Or do you think it means, what does it mean if he can exist without it?
It could be a couple of things. It could be he doesn't want it, plain and simple. And I've had many principals who've turned around and said, Will, I'm not having close protection. And as much as I may advise that they have it, they just decline it. I shouldn't be saying this, but I am not a huge fan of deploying close protection. I think it should only be utilised at times where there's a heightened risk. So for someone like Mr. McCartney, who is wandering around doing his own business, not in the public eye, doesn't have a particularly negative sentiment there and about him, then he can go about his business, and if he's resilient enough to stop for, I remember with 50 Cent, for example, he would stop for every single selfie with everybody that he met. Super lovely guy. There are other celebrities who are just very acrimonious towards their fans, and you're not surprised really when they start getting a bit of hate, and they probably need security. So it can vary.
Very diplomatically said. Will Geddes, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Pleasure having you.